Gotta do it talk show style. Just take it out.
Like this? That's
you know,
weird.
this is no enjoy wand. Just get rid of it.
Right. Oh, okay, it's fine.
See, now don't we feel better?
Yes, you do.
We're like kind of on hands gals.
Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna start, Susie?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, great.
I am here because of Tristan. She knew I was going to be in New York, and she said, you need to wake up. The sex bloggers are going to be in, I don't know if you said Baltimore, but you said something that made me go, what? But then after I arrived in Charm City, I started to see what all the fuss was about. I've really had a good time here, and so many awesome local people have come. I'm so glad you opened up this last little session, because it's just great to have, find out what's going on in this area, which I think on the left coast we think of you as so buttoned down. And now I'm going to retract all that. No more lying. No more of the deceptions. And I kind of heard so many things at this conference that I'd like to go off on some tangents, but I promised I would talk a little bit about how I got involved in my own sex revolution. Somebody asked me the other day, when did these things start occurring to you about your sex life and, what you wanted and, these crazy ideas. And I said, oh, it was long before I ever even had kissed anybody or held anyone's hand. I mean, I was a kid of the 60s reading my mom left The Female Eunuch on the ironing board. And, this Germaine Greer, and I opened it just coincidentally to the page where she says, I dare you to taste your own menstrual blood. I mean, she's like saying, look, deal with your cunt. Stop acting like we're all Barbie dolls below the waist. It was very, very bracing. And I was like, oh, that's great. As soon as my period starts, I'm definitely going to taste my menstrual blood. I'm like, I'm on it. Like, just put that down. And it was as if Germaine Greer had floated into the room, and turned on the hormone fountain, because it must have been within the week. I started bleeding. It was lunch break. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. You get a lot of time off to work your way through the snow drifts to get your lunch and then come back for the next period. But I was a little late, and I was such a good girl. A ridiculously good girl. I was never late. I never did anything wrong. But I showed up for English, and they said, Susanna Bright, you go to Dr. Schalke's office, the principal. You've blown it. You are going to go to detention. And I was just outraged. I remember being ushered into his office and, to get my detention slip. And I said, you can't do that. My period started today for the very first time, and every girl in this junior high school is going through the same thing, and you cannot treat me like this. And as soon as I said menstruate, I watched his face just changed these violent colors. I was like the first time I'd ever really noticed a man being affected by female sexual power, however this was. I didn't even understand it, but I won. He just sort of backed away from me. He goes, yes, never mind. No. I'm like, how intriguing. I have to fast forward a bunch of years. This is kind of a good parenting story. For me, the preceding years to On Our Backs were filled with the kind of sexual controversy in the lesbian community in particular that was just rife at the time. Jeb is nodding her head up and down. It was really rough. And it was also, isn't this an interesting coincidence, the formal beginning of the moral majority. It was the beginning of Ralph Reed and Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and all these people approaching people in government and each other and saying, we are going to, take America back, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, a group of gay I'll just call them liberals and left-wingers, decided to hold a convention about what we were going to do. Like, we have to get our shit together. Were you there by any chance, Erica? I mean, somebody might have been there. It had the stupidest name. It was fated to die. It was called NOLAG, National Organization of Lesbian and Gays. I mean, really bad acronym. But a few people from there ended up creating the HRC?
Human Rights Campaign.
Yeah, Human Rights Campaign. But we didn't know that yet. The room really was filled with people who had been hardcore socialists and SDS members, as well as people who, had been on the Tom Hayden campaign or whatever, but we had all come out and were involved in gay stuff because of the... Oh, it's all over. You're just going to have to listen to me. So, I can keep talking. I have this huge voice. I will not be deterred. I came down as part of the San Francisco contingent, and this is one of those conferences where we're going to write our mission statement. We are going to discuss what this organization stands for. We are going to take on these Christian bullies, and that, we've had it. This is before gay marriage and military equality for gay members. It wasn't even on the radar. That's how old this was. And just by chance, I'm in the San Francisco contingent. Somebody said, Susie, can you write the amendment about defending other sexual minorities? I'm like, okay. And it was held at the UCLA campus in Los Angeles, and I went outside to the car, and I just scrawled something on a piece of paper in 2 minutes flat. It was your typical... a blow against one is a blow against all. United we stand, divided we fall. I mean, it was like a chant on a picket line, la la la. But the only thing that was a little bit different about it is that I quickly cribbed together a list of every kind of obviously targeted persecuted sexual minority I could think of just sitting there. So I was like, the leather community, transsexuals, cross-dressers, sex workers, transsexuals, I just was like blah, blah, blah. The typical groups that I suppose you could say I thought of everyone who'd ever been busted in San Francisco by the Vice Squad recently. That was the list. And I came back in. We put all of our little amendments. Everyone's going to discuss it. And I noticed this chill and this ugliness in the room that certain people there who had, in fact, pulled the convention together, really prominent, leaders, much more well-known than I, were like, who are you? And who wrote this? Sadomasochists? Sex workers? Transsexuals? What kind of sick, who paid you? You have been paid by the pornographic gay men's leather mafia, you. And like all of a sudden it was the years that, people were listening to punk music, right? My hero was Patti Smith. I had on like this really shocking color of lipstick, and I had a little cute studded leather collar. It meant nothing. I mean, I was just like punk rock radical chick, but white slavery, that's where I was from. They had it all planned out, and they had their eye on me, and it was really shook me up. It's the first time I'd ever been directly attacked in that. It's interesting. It was slut shaming, wasn't it? I never went through that in high school. Among my young women in the 70s, in our little consciousness raising groups that we'd have on the girls' athletic field, oh my God, we just said whatever we want. Karen's here, she can testify this. We played with each other, we experimented, we did everything we wanted. I don't ever remember stabbing each other in the back, but this was my first brush with it. Now, here's the interesting part. It just so happened my dad had worked at UCLA for many years, and although most of the time I was one of those self-centered, older teens, young adults who doesn't pay any attention to their parents, never calls except when there's a problem, ignoring him ruthlessly. But I knew he was on campus that day, and I found him. And I showed him the piece of paper. He starts copy editing it with a red pen, And I said, I've never done any of the things on my kink list. I don't even know. But I'm pretty sure that their reaction is full of shit. It's political and bigoted, and I'm just shocked that they would take this point of view. But they're so vociferous about it. Is there really something, intrinsically sick about, they say? Can this hold up at all? And he had in those days when people had offices with doors and their own walls, and he had a picture of the young men that he first lived with when he went to UC Berkeley in the late 40s. He lived in one of these houses that was just young male undergraduates, and he said, "You see everybody in this picture? All gay." But people didn't say that. You were a homosexual. And everybody was either going to see a psychiatrist, desperately trying to change, trying to kill themselves, trying to do this, trying to have a beard, frantically hiding it. Everyone was, this is the late 40s. It was bad. And then he points at this one young man who I began to realize was in the back of the picture, who had a slightly redder mouth. And he said, "And this is George. And George is the first person I ever heard use the word gay." And he would put on drag and go out and have espresso on Telegraph Avenue with the rest of us, and he would say, "Thank God I'm gay. I would rather die than be straight," and we would all be just like, "What?" George is crazy, we're all dying of insecurity, and we think there's something broken and horrible and depraved about us, and George is just the Oscar Wilde of this entire campus. And my dad said, everything these people are saying about you and attacking about you is what they said about homosexuals when I was a young man. Every single thing. And it's all the same baloney. It was a very, you can just imagine how much I loved my dad for saying that to me, and then we just hugged and kissed, and I took my copy-edited amendment back and just, stick it up your ass. My dad says. I've been in that situation now because I finally became a parent, and not just my own daughter, but parenting other young people, where you get to stick up for them, and sometimes they really need someone who's tougher and older and just is absolutely by their side, and it is one of the greatest gifts ever. I love it. And that is certainly at least 10 minutes. And I realized that I didn't say a stupid thing about the particulars of on our backs and good vibrations. Let's talk about that in the questions. But that is really where this comes from. All the the vibrators and the photo shoots and everything we did, and even sitting around and laughing our asses off, getting high and deciding On Our Backs was going to be the name of the magazine. It all came from this just, screw them. They don't get to dominate this discussion. We have a different point of view here, and we're real, we're authentic. So how about that?